Hi, I'm Tiffany. Welcome to Towering TBR. So, it's been a little while since I have updated you with the books that I have been reading, and so I'm going to separate my reads into two separate videos. The first, which is this one, will focus on the science fiction and fantasy books that I've been reading, and the next will be basically not science fiction or fantasy. It'll have mystery, nonfiction, romance, poetry even. So stay tuned for that because that's coming. And if you're new, I read using audiobooks. I have migraines, which disturb my vision, and so I will let you know which audiobooks I think are worth picking up and which ones I think you should avoid. All right, let's dive right in. First, I want to chat about my rereads. I used to feel really guilty about rereading because I have so many unread books on my shelves, and I felt like it wasn't fair to them to go back to an old favorite. But I should just stop thinking that way because rereading is such a joy. I found out that Becca was going to be reading The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is one of my absolute favorite science fiction books, and so I decided I would reread it with her. If you're unfamiliar, this is a science fiction space opera focused on a mixed crew on a tunneling vessel that punch wormholes through space to create fast travel. The world building is incredibly rich, and Becca and I had some great discussions on not only the book, but the author as she creates immensely complex characters and relationships. We then went ahead and picked up the next book, A Closed and Common Orbit. This does not follow the same crew, but this is still set in the same universe, and so I would still recommend you read the first book before you read this because she doesn't rehash any of her world building. This focuses on two sentient beings, Pepper and Sidra, as they struggle to gain rights that they should have. I loved rereading this so much that we've decided we're going to read all four of them together. So I will be picking up book 3 very soon. I'm trying not to feel guilty about rereading anymore. It's like the perfect thing if you're in a slump or you just need some extra joy. It's literally free dopamine. So I am going to try not to feel guilty when I pick up books to reread. How do you feel about it? Do you ever reread? Do you ever feel guilty about it? Let's talk about it in comments. All 4 of the Wayfarer books are narrated by Rachel Dulude, and I think she does a wonderful job. I say pick it up in whatever format you like best. Okay, so that was the totality of my science fiction. The rest of this is going to be fantasy. Don't worry, I do think science fiction is going to be making a comeback in my diet, especially since the new James S.A. Corey book comes out in just like 2 weeks. So, if you followed me for a while, you'll know that I love middle grade fantasy. It is, especially if you're ever intimidated by fantasy, middle grade just makes it very accessible and very readable and usually full of more hope than like adult books have. I was ecstatic to get the 4th book, Amari and the Metalwork Menace, as an ALC, which is an advanced listening copy. So I got to listen to the audiobook before it came out, and I really loved it. Amari is a young black girl who in the first book finds out that there is a whole supernatural world hidden in her world. And in this 4th book, she and her friends are trying to figure out what is causing this uncontrollable curse. I won't say more than that, but if you do want a few more details, still spoiler free, I will link this single book review that I did, just in case you're not quite sure if you want to pick it up or not. The audiobook is narrated by Imani Parks. She does several voices and even some accents, and I really love her performance. I think the audiobook is the best way to go about it. If you saw my last update, you'll know that I've been making my way through Discworld, and I absolutely loved Guards, which is the first book in the sub-series City Watch. I recently picked up the 2nd book in that, Men at Arms, and we are following the City Watch as they try to solve some murders. Carrot is a huge character in this book, and I absolutely love him. I think he's tied for my favorite character in Discworld with Death. I think both of these characters are immensely interesting. And Carrot is so shockingly naive that some of the situations just cracked me up. Yeah, I literally laughed out loud multiple times while reading this book. I gave it 5 stars, and I can't recommend it enough. I've already picked up the 3rd book in the subseries, Feet of Clay, and I will be getting to that very, very shortly. Also, the audiobooks are definitely the way to go with Discworld. They have multiple narrators and occasionally some sound effects, and quite honestly is the best way to consume this story. So these last 3 I'm going to talk about I read in trying to complete my Reddit fantasy bingo board. Did you compete in fantasy Reddit? If you did, share your board down in the comments below. So I picked up Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is a standalone winter fantasy book that I absolutely adored. We're following Miriam. She is the daughter of a very soft-hearted moneylender, and because he doesn't fight very hard to get his money back, she grows up in abject poverty. She goes hungry, she goes without clothes, and eventually she decides she is going to be the enforcer. She is going to get their money back, and she is not going to starve any longer. She turns out to be a very shrewd moneylender and decides to brag in the forest that she can basically turn silver into gold. The Starrick, who is kind of this elven magical being, overhears her and decides to put her through 3 trials. And after that, she then needs to save her world from an eternal winter. While there are other perspectives besides Miriam's, and unfortunately, that is where the audiobook failed. So we jump between 6 people's different perspectives, and we can jump even mid-chapter, and it doesn't say who is speaking. You have to use context clues to basically figure out whose perspective you're in. The audiobook especially flopped because the narrator, Lisa Flanagan, doesn't do hardly any distinctive voices, so I could never tell who was speaking. If I didn't have the book alongside with me, I would have been confused. I would have been utterly lost. So, while I recommend the book, I do not recommend the audiobook unless you absolutely need it for access. For one of the trickier prompts, I picked up Legendborn by Tracy Deon. This is a YA fantasy trilogy focused on Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Our protagonist, Bree, has just lost her mother. She has the opportunity to enroll in a university to kind of get dual credits as a high schooler, and decides to go since it is her mother's alma mater. While she is there, she stumbles across some magic, and this gets her thinking, was her mom's death an accident? Or did she get in the way of some powerful people and discover a secret? Bree decides to go undercover into one of the secret societies to try and find more answers. This took a long time to get going, but once it did, I raced through it. It was so compelling. My only downside, and it's a pretty big downside, is our characters really just did some insta-love. It was, hey, I just met you, but I love you and you're going to be in my life forever? No. It is probably one of my biggest bookish pet peeves is insta-love. If you have read the trilogy, should I continue? Because I'm not 100% sure. I thought the world building was really good, and I really liked the history and the commentary on race, but the insta-love was pretty cringy. I thought the audiobook was really good. The narrator is Janice Abbott Pratt, and she does several distinctive voices as well as some southern accents. Lastly, I have The Poisoned King, which is the second in the Impossible Creatures series by Katherine Rundell. If you've been around a while, you'll know that the first book, Impossible Creatures, made it to my favorites the year I read it, and I was so excited to pick up book 2. In book 2, we are following Christopher. He is summoned to the magical realm to help save the dragons. Along their way, there are other fantastical creatures who either help or harm, and he comes across a princess who is embroiled in her own disaster, and so they team up to work together. All of the characters are incredibly likable, especially the snarky mini dragon called Jacques. I loved him. This was such a wonderful escape, and in the back there is a bestiary, which gives you even more world building. I think if you like fantasy, friendship, and animals, you'll probably love this just as much as I did. The audiobook is narrated by Sam West. He definitely does some vocal variations, and which made this book really come alive. The third book, The Never Fear, comes out in September, and I am eagerly anticipating it. I can't wait for more of this world, and I recommend it in physical or audiobook form, whichever you like best. Although I definitely recommend getting the physical format so that you can have access to the bestiary. Okay, so that was the 7 science fiction and fantasy books that I've read lately. Make sure to keep your eye out on my next wrap-up, which will focus on all of the other genres that I read. What have you been reading? Do you tend to stick to like one genre, or are you a wide reader like I am? Let's discuss. Thanks so much for joining me. I can't wait to talk about books with you. Happy reading!